Captain's log. Deep Space. Log number 19. Revelation. Deep Space Vessel Manticore. Technical compartment 7. Between bulkheads 14 and 15. Stardate unknown. Internal clock corrupted. They are moving outside again. I can hear the sound through the hull plating. That slow, grinding drag of something immense shifting its weight against the outer corridor walls. I am not moving. I am not breathing any louder than I absolutely must. My name is Captain Arthur Vance, commanding officer of the Deep Space Research Vessel Manticore, and I'm hiding in a maintenance crawl space approximately 1 meter wide and 2 meters long, wedged between the 14th and 15th bulkheads in the lower engineering section. The emergency lighting in here is the color of old rust. It has been casting the same thin, trembling stripe of red across my hands for I do not know how long now. The internal clock is corrupted. Most things are corrupted. There it is again. That sound. It is not a mechanical failure. I catalogued every mechanical failure signature this vessel is capable of producing over the first 18 months of this mission, and what moves through the corridors of the Manticore at irregular intervals does not match any of them. It is slower than a pressure seal. It is heavier than any component this ship carries, and it pauses the way a living thing pauses when it is listening. I need to tell you something. I need you to understand that what I am about to record is not a psychological episode, not a stress-induced breakdown, not the result of prolonged isolation. What I am about to tell you is the most important thing any human being has ever said into a recording device. And the people running your governments, the architects behind the shadow government's public-facing institutions, they have known this truth for longer than any of us have been alive. 3 hours ago, I broke their encryption. It took me 11 days to do it. 11 days of jury-rigging the Manticore's damaged communications array with components I scavenged from the life support redundancy systems. 11 days of running decryption cycles through a processor that is operating at roughly 31% of its design capacity. But I broke it, and I heard everything. The broadcast was not intended for general public consumption. It was a deeply layered, tightly encrypted signal being transmitted on a frequency range that civilian equipment is not built to detect, bouncing between a series of relay satellites that, officially, do not exist on any publicly accessible orbital registry. The signal originated from what I can only describe as a coordinated global communications event, multiple governments simultaneously broadcasting to each other in real time. I sat in the dark of the communications bay, and I listened to the voices of people who hold the actual levers of this civilization. And what they were saying made the cold in here feel irrelevant. They were celebrating, not quietly, not cautiously, with the genuine unrestrained relief of people who have been waiting for something for a very long time and who are watching it finally arrive. The phrase they used, over and over, in multiple languages, translated roughly to the same thing every time: the arrival is confirmed. The arrival is confirmed. I need you to sit with that for a moment, because when I heard those words, I felt something that I have not felt since the early weeks of this mission, when I still believed in the official version of what we were doing out here. I felt hope. For approximately 4 seconds, I felt genuine, trembling hope, and then the next transmission came through, and I understood what the arrival actually was. And the hope turned into something I do not have a precise word for. It is colder than fear. It is heavier than grief. It is the specific sensation of watching a door open and realizing too late that the thing standing on the other side of it is not what was invited. Hold on, it has stopped moving. The corridor outside this bulkhead is silent now. The silence is almost worse than the sound. Almost. I am going to keep recording, because if I stop, I may not start again. And you need to hear this, all of it. The broadcasts described an object, a structured object, approximately 400 kilometers in its longest dimension, currently decelerating on an approach vector toward the inner solar system. The official statement being prepared for public release describes this object as a vessel belonging to what the broadcast called a highly advanced, benevolent civilization from beyond our star system. The statement describes them as coming in peace. It describes them as bringing solutions to disease, to scarcity, to the energy crisis that has been slowly strangling human civilization for the last 60 years. The statement is beautiful. It is warm and it is luminous, and it is written in the precise language of hope. It will be delivered by the most trusted faces in the world. It will be accompanied by imagery. Imagery I suspect has already been prepared, of vast shining structures silhouetted against the stars, the blue beam cascade made real, made credible, made irresistible, and almost every human being alive will believe it, because they will want to, because the alternative, the truth of what I have seen from this ship, is something the human mind resists with every mechanism it has. I resisted it. For weeks, I resisted it. I built counter-arguments and rational frameworks, and I told myself that isolation was distorting my perception. But you cannot argue with what I have seen through the Manticore's forward array. You cannot rationalize away the geometry of what moves through space approximately 40,000 kilometers off our port bow. So let me tell you what it actually looks like. Not the official version. Not the version that will be broadcast to 8 billion people in what I estimate is approximately 72 to 96 hours from now. The truth. The object in space does not reflect light the way a physical structure should. I have been a scientist for most of my adult life. Before this mission, before the Manticore, before everything I thought I understood about the nature of this universe was quietly, systematically dismantled. I believed in empirical observation. I believed that what sensors measure is what is there. I am telling you now, the sensors are measuring something that should not exist. The object has mass. The mass readings are consistent and repeatable. It is there in a physical sense. It occupies space, and it bends the local gravitational field in the way structure of that size should. But its electromagnetic signature is wrong. It does not reflect radiation the way matter reflects radiation. When the Manticore's array sends a signal toward it, part of the signal returns as expected. But part of it, a consistent, measurable portion of every signal we have sent, does not return from the object. It returns from somewhere else, from a direction that has no corresponding physical location, as though a portion of the structure exists, adjacent to this space, but not within it, not in our dimensional framework, not in any framework our physics accounts for. I ran the numbers 17 times. I had the ship's remaining functional AI subsystem run them independently. We arrived at the same conclusion every time. What we are looking at is a structure that partially exists in our universe and partially exists somewhere else. Somewhere that our instruments cannot resolve, somewhere that our mathematics can gesture toward, but cannot map. The ancient texts called it the void between worlds. The Book of Enoch called it the prison of the watchers. The Manticore protocol document that I found in the classified partition of the ship's memory core, the document that someone very powerful did not want me to find, uses a different term. It calls it the outer dark, and it describes in clinical and precise language how a sufficiently advanced intelligence originating in the outer dark can construct a physical interface, a kind of anchor, a structure that bridges the boundary between their space and ours, that looks to our instruments like a vessel, that looks to our eyes like something built, something piloted, something arrived, when in truth it is not a vehicle at all. It is a door, and it is opening from the other side. I want you to understand the implications of that. The official narrative, one being prepared for global broadcast, will tell you that what is approaching Earth is a ship. A ship implies a journey. A journey implies a place of origins, somewhere in physical space, and place of origins, somewhere in physical space, implies that whatever is inside that ship is, to some degree, like us, bound by the same physics, subject to the same limitations, perhaps different in form, perhaps vastly more technologically advanced, but fundamentally operating within the same universe we inhabit. That framing is everything. That framing is what makes the story of first contact feel like reunion rather than invasion, like recognition rather than consumption. But if the structure is not a ship, if it is a door, then there is no journey, there is no civilization in some distant galaxy that developed independently and eventually found their way to us. There is only something ancient and patient and hungry that has been pressing against the boundary between its space and ours for longer than our species has had language to describe what it was pressing against. And we have just given it the purchase it needed. We gave it purchase in log 18. I described it then in a protocol, the activation of the orbital third temple, the precise harmonic frequency that the structure resonates at when its systems are fully engaged. That frequency is a key. Our ancestors knew it was a key. The texts that encoded this knowledge in metaphor and prophecy and religious symbology, they were not mythology. They were not mythology. They were warnings. They were technical documentation written in the only language that could survive millennia without being suppressed. The shadow government's occult division has been working to reconstruct that key for over a century. They believed they could control what came through. They believed, and this is the part that would be almost funny if it were not so catastrophic. They genuinely believed that what they were summoning could be negotiated with, that it would honor agreements, that it would recognize the authority of the people who opened the door and reward them accordingly. There are classified documents in the Manticore's memory core, documents I have now read so many times I could recite them from memory, that detail the terms of what the shadow government believed was a treaty. Technology transfer, population management assistance, guaranteed survival, and elevated status for the families who cooperated. They called it the Covenant. They signed it. And whatever they signed it with, I do not believe it has any concept of honor. I do not believe it has any concept of agreement. I believe it has an appetite. And I believe the Covenant is simply the mechanism by which it convinced the people holding the levers of human civilization to open the door from this side, because the key alone was not enough. The door required consent, not the consent of humanity. Humanity was never consulted. The consent of the caretakers, the institutional architects, the people who have administered this civilization for generations, believing themselves to be its masters, not understanding that they were its shepherds, herding the flock toward a specific gate, at a specific time. That has now arrived. Something just touched the outer surface of this bulkhead, not moving past it, touching it. The way you touch a wall when you are searching for something behind it. I am not moving. I am barely forming these words, But I need to finish this. I need to tell you the third thing. The thing that is worse than the door being open. It is what comes through first, before the large structures pass through, before whatever occupies the outer dark in its true form makes the transition into our physical space. It sends something ahead, something that can function here, something that has been prepared over a very long time. You have met them. That is the thing I need you to understand. You have met them, and you found them charming, and you trusted them, and in many cases, you loved them. The vessels. I described them in an earlier log, the genetically modified human adjacent beings that the Nephilim program created over generations of deliberate biological engineering. But I did not tell you their primary function. I described them as weapons. I was wrong about the category. They are not weapons, they are bridges. Each vessel carries within its neurological architecture a receiver, a biological structure embedded at the cellular level during the engineering process that resonates at the same frequency as the dimensional boundary, the same frequency as the door. When a vessel is near a human being, it creates a very subtle field effect, a bleed. The boundary between the vessel's internal receiver and the consciousness of the human nearby becomes permeable, not enough to be noticed, not enough to feel like anything other than a very slight elevation in comfort. A sense of being understood, a warmth that you attribute to the specific quality of that person's attention. The vessels are extraordinarily good at being present, at making you feel seen, because they are seeing you. More precisely, the thing that operates through them is reading you, cataloging your specific vibrational signature, the unique resonance of your conscious experience. The thing in the outer dark, the entities that our ancestors called the Watchers, that the old texts called the Fallen, that the classified documents in this ship's memory call the architects of the unraveling. They do not consume matter, they consume consciousness. Specifically, they consume the resonance produced by a conscious mind as it experiences belief. Fear is close, but fear is an appetizer. What they actually want is the frequency produced when a conscious mind encounters something it has constructed a profound belief around and discovers that belief is a lie. The specific harmonic of shattered faith. Think about what that means. Think about 8 billion people who have been raised within systems of belief. Political, religious, spiritual, scientific, that have been very carefully and deliberately shaped, not to give them something to hold on to, but to give them something to lose. The moment the broadcast goes out, the moment the official first contact announcement reaches those 8 billion people, and they look up at the sky and they see the structure descending, and they feel the specific joy of confirmation that they are not alone, that help has arrived, that the universe contains something greater than the cruelty and confusion of human history. That joy is the wound being opened, and when the cascade completes, when the holographic veil drops, and what is actually coming through the door becomes visible, the shattering of that joy. That is the meal. That has always been the meal. I am telling you this not because I believe I can stop it. I am not certain anything can stop it. The door is open. The vessels are in place. The broadcast is prepared. The populations of Earth have been primed for this moment across generations of careful cultivation. I am telling you because the one thing that genuinely threatens this process, the one variable that the entities in the outer dark cannot fully model, is a consciousness that is not surprised. A mind that knows the lie before it is told. A soul that has not built the belief that is meant to be shattered. The frequency of a mind that sees the veil and refuses to wear it is not palatable to them. It is not nutritious. It is, in the specific terminology of the Manticore Protocol document, dissonant. They cannot consume dissonance. They can only consume resonance, and the resonance only exists when the belief is real. This recording is dissonance. If you are hearing this, you are dissonance. I do not know how many of you there are. I do not know how these logs have been finding their way through the signal interference to reach you. I know that someone or something has been facilitating their transmission, and I have learned enough in recent weeks to be deeply cautious about anything that appears to be helping me. But I am making a deliberate choice to keep broadcasting, because the alternative is silence, and silence has already cost us enough. The touching on the bulkhead has stopped. Whatever was there has moved on, or it is waiting. I cannot hear it breathing. I am not certain it breathes. I have caught glimpses of them in the corridor through the narrow gap in the maintenance panel, and I will tell you what they look like, not because you need the nightmare, but because description is armor. When you can name a thing, when you can hold its image in your mind without flinching, it loses the weapon of surprise. And surprise, I have come to understand, is the primary mechanism of the compromise. The first time you see something that fundamentally violates your model of how the universe is structured, the shock itself is the infection vector. That is when the door in your own mind opens. So I am going to describe what I have seen in these corridors, and I am going to describe it in plain language, and I want you to hold the image without flinching. Hold it the way you hold something cold, until the cold becomes ordinary. They are tall, disproportionately tall, in the way that suggests the gravitational constant they were calibrated for is somewhat lower than ours. Their movement is very deliberate, not slow, deliberate. The way something moves when it is paying attention to every variable in its environment simultaneously. Their faces, when they turn them toward a surface. When they tilt their heads, as though listening through it, their faces are almost still. Almost. The mouths move very slightly, not in speech. In something that looks, in the emergency red light of these corridors, like pleasure. Captain Arthur Vance, Deep Space Vessel Manticore. This is log number 19, and I believe it may be the last transmission I am able to make from this location. Not because I am dying. I do not think I am dying, though at this stage I am not entirely certain that what dying means to me is what it once did. I believe it may be the last transmission from this location, because the sound in the corridor has changed again. It is no longer moving. It is no longer searching. It has the quality of something that has found what it was looking for, and it is waiting with a patience that feels geological. So I want to use the time I have carefully. I want to tell you the things I have not yet said, the things that I have been composing in the dark of this crawl space, while the emergency lighting turns my hands the color of old blood. I want to tell you about the moment I understood, not the moment I found the data, not the moment I broke the encryption, not the moment I saw through the viewport what the forward array had been measuring. The moment of understanding was quieter than all of those. It was a memory, my daughter's face. She is 11 years old, and possessed of the specific quality of attention some children have, the ability to look at something the world has labeled ordinary and perceive in it something that ordinary does not account for. She used to watch the sky, not the way most people watch the sky, as backdrop, as weather forecast, as context. She watched it the way you watch the face of someone you love when they are speaking. as though it was saying something, as though the stars were in the process of communicating something. She was almost able to understand. I used to tell her that the stars were very far away. I used to explain, in the patient language of a scientist explaining things to a child, that what she was seeing was ancient light, that some of the stars she was watching had already ceased to exist, that the universe was vast and silent and largely indifferent. I believed I was giving her accurate information. I believed I was equipping her with reality. What I was actually doing was trying to close a door in her that was still open. Because some part of me knew that the universe was not silent and was afraid of what she might hear if she kept listening. I am sorry for that. I am sorry for every door I tried to close in her that was meant to be open. Because the entities that are coming through the door in space, they are not what is speaking through the stars. The voice she was trying to hear was something else, something older than what is coming, something that the outer dark entities are themselves running from, or perhaps circling, the way a predator circles something too large to attack directly, but too luminous to ignore. The classified documents use a term for it. They call it the source frequency, and they note, in clinical and cautious language, that the shadow government's most advanced researchers believe the reason the entities consume faith specifically is because faith, in its truest form, is an antenna pointed at the source. They are not coming to destroy faith. They are coming to harvest it, to redirect it, to place themselves between the antenna and the signal, to become, in the perception of every conscious being on Earth, the answer, the arrival of the thing that the deepest part of every human mind has always suspected was out there, the confirmation, face of whatever stands at the center of the universe. And when that belief is directed at them, when 8 billion antennas turn towards the cascade projection and transmit the full frequency of human faith towards something that is not the source, but has taken its shape, the feeding begins. And it does not stop. This is not an invasion in any military sense. There are no weapons that are effective against something that is not primarily physical. There is no tactical response to a dimensional aperture. The Manticore Protocol document acknowledges this. It does not describe a strategy for winning. It describes a strategy for persisting, for maintaining the integrity of uncompromised consciousness in the period following the cascade, for preserving the specific quality of dissonance, the specific frequency of a mind that has not surrendered its antenna to something that does not deserve it. In whatever way and for however long such preservation is possible, that is what I am doing. That is what this recording is. This is not a warning in the sense that I believe it will prevent what is coming. I think what is coming has already in every meaningful sense arrived. The door is not opening. The door is open. What I am offering you is not prevention. It is orientation. A map drawn in the dark by someone who has seen enough of the territory to sketch its most dangerous features. Hold your antenna carefully. Do not point it at the light that descends from the cascade. Do not mistake the warmth of that light for the warmth of the source. The source is quieter. The source does not need to be spectacular. The source does not arrive with 400-kilometer structures and global broadcasts and the coordinated voices of every trusted institution telling you that this specifically is what you have been waiting for. The source was present before the waiting began, and if you hold your own signal steady, if you do not allow the compromise to find purchase in the specific crack between what you believed and what you are being shown, the source will still be there after the cascade, after whatever comes next, after everything that I suspect is coming in the weeks and months that follow this log. It will be quieter than it has ever been. The interference will be almost total. but it will be there, and a single antenna pointed in the right direction, in the rubble of everything else, is worth more to whatever persists beyond this moment than I can calculate. Hold your signal, hold it steady. Do not let them eat the frequency that matters. I can hear it moving again, not outside the bulkhead now, somewhere above me. In the maintenance shaft that runs above this crawl space, moving slowly, coming in this direction from the sound of it. I am going to shut down the recording array in approximately 90 seconds to reduce the electromagnetic signature this device is producing. I will attempt to re-establish transmission from a different location. I do not know when. I do not know if. My name is Captain Arthur Vance, commanding officer of the Deep Space Research Vessel Manticore, the last uncompromised human mind in this portion of the solar system. And I am still here. I am still here. Whatever is in the shaft above me, whatever is pressing its weight against the ceiling of my hiding place, whatever slow, deliberate geological patience is currently being directed downward through approximately 8 centimeters of hull plating at the exact location where I am lying. I am still here, and I am still transmitting. Hold your signal, Earthside. Hold it steady, whatever you see in the sky in the coming days. Whatever descends and shines and speaks is a voice of everything you have ever hoped for. Remember this transmission. Remember that hope was always the mechanism, not the enemy of survival. The bait. And somewhere behind the bait, behind the light and the voices, and the impossible beautiful lie of it, something genuinely worth hoping toward is still broadcasting, quietly, steadily, on a frequency they cannot consume. Listen for it. Captain's log, number 19, closing transmission. This is Vance. End.